Hi, everyone, welcome to another exciting comics loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I am so glad to be talking with comics creator. I'll also say comics advocate. I feel like anybody that is involved in sort of the press work side of comics takes that role of advocacy, and that is author creator Matt Kund. Matt, thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk about the wonderful medium of comics.
Absolutely, absolutely. Glad to have you. I know the press that I was alluding to there is Ageless Press, so you have gone to that framework of thinking about sharing comics. You also have the Constructing Comics podcast, and then you create comics as well. You have Dying Days,
Yeah,
which is currently out and around, and I think you have a story in My Faith, an anthology. And am I right
yeah,
in saying you've also worked on Cthulhu?
yeah. I was I've been in various Cthulhu projects. I have
Hmm.
been in one volume of Cthulhu is Hard to Spell,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is put together by Russell Nolte. And then also I have been part of the Cthulhu Invades sort of universe with a
Hmm.
story in, let's see, I always mess this up in my head. It's Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. So that's Alice in Wonderland characters. And I've also been in, and I think it's about to ship soon, is Cthulhu Invades Neverland. So that's Lovecraftian characters versus characters in the Peter Pan universe. So
Nice.
everybody's taking advantage of that, public domain Cthulhu stuff. So it's very popular and easy to work in.
As well they should, as well they should. I love it. Love it. It's really interesting visually and has its own aesthetic, so always interested in those. So you've worked in comics and with comics in a variety of ways, so I'm curious about what makes comics this unique space in your life that you kind of celebrate in these ways.
Yeah, so I think I have a story that's very similar to a lot of folks. Obviously a kid, I'm old enough that I bought comics off of the rack in a drugstore. Sort of my gateway comic was G.I. Joe. Watched the cartoons, was in a CBS, I think they were called People's Drugs at the time, and
Hmm.
saw G.I. Joe was probably in the 50s, the issue number. Got that and started reading it. I didn't know at the time, but I guess I was sort of the one of the, I know now with the internet, there's like, I'm a Marvel guy, I'm a DC guy, I'm both. Without knowing that that was a thing, I was very much like a Marvel zombie with GI Joe sort of being the introduction, and then branching off into Spider-Man, X-Men, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't really know that I was doing the whole brand loyalty thing pretty early on. But then expanding, you see a cool cover of Batman, it's hard to not pick that up. So yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, I think by sheer availability, I was initially a DC person, but then Marvel sort of caught my eye, and then Dark Horse, and then Topps, and so it
Yeah.
was pretty much whatever was available that I could consume at that point.
Yeah, so just to sort of continue, so initially child cartoons, cartoons transfer to comics. I had a dad who could draw really well, an uncle who's in fine arts, always sort of really had that desire to be an artist. I can draw a little bit, but my career path now has taken me more to the writing side. Um, but then sort of got back into it later in life. I've told this story a few times. I took a job where I had a lot of like pressure,
Hmm.
became a father, and was dealing with some sickness in my family. So I was just sort of sitting in a gray cubicle. It's gray outside, I'm doing boring spreadsheets, and I'm like, what used to make me happy as a kid? And I was like, I really enjoyed reading comics.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, just sort of doing things mindlessly on the computer, data, all this kind of stuff. So I get out my phone and I search for podcasts, and I start just having sort of friendly voices in my ear talking about comics. And from there, it's, find the LCS, get the pull list, sort of get back into it that way, and then
Hmm.
sort of the desire to create, um, after the love of comics came back, the desire to want to create, sort of bit me, and went from being a Wednesday warrior and that into the sort of the folks that really are in the comics that like, hey, I'm gonna be a Wednesday warrior. I'm gonna read all of this stuff, but also like I want to take it a step further and make some stuff. So it just sort of evolved from there. So I guess that's sort of my origin story and rebirth with comics.
I love it. I love it. I
Yeah,
love the origin and the origin that comes later, the
yeah,
rebirth. Love
yeah.
it. So as a publisher, as a reader, as a writer, what are the kinds of stories that pull you in that you're most attracted to?
Yeah, so when I write, and this is something that I want to get better about, is concepts really pull me in. But I realize that like concepts are only so much. Like there has to be like investment in the characters. Like, it could be like the coolest thing ever, some sort of sci-fi battle. But like if I don't care about the characters.
Hmm.
Like it's just like, hey, this is just sci-fi opera or a fantasy story. So I will say the concepts are what initially sort of pull me in or intrigue me about a story, but then you know you have to execute beyond that. Like you have to make me care about the characters. So I know that's not really the best answer because
No, no, that's a great answer.
but like really cool concepts are like I love when somebody was like, it's the like if they give me a tagline or it's like this meets this, like I love
Mhm.
those as well. So it's like, you know, I kind of love the, a similar world that a story is in, and then like, these different aspects. So I do love the it's this meets this if it's done well.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so concepts really sort of are what might catch my attention at first, and what will sort of keep me going with the story is investment in the characters.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. And you've got to have that character alongside. Absolutely. It's a really interesting balance between the concept and character.
Yeah, I think, and this is probably similar to a lot of people who start creating. I sort of cringe when I go back and I look at some of the first stuff that I did because I realize that was all concept. Like you could have replaced these characters with anybody. Um, so I see that in my early writing, like what really drew me to a story, like I focused on that too much. It was concept, concept, concept. And now I'm sort of like, I got to make sure that these characters are relatable, that you're rooting for the protagonist and all those kind of things. But definitely a good this meets this or a really cool concept will pull me into or it make me excited to try out a story.
Yeah, yeah. Curious about along the way collaborators that have been some of the most positive people, supporters, and then I know again you've worked in the publisher side, the creator side, so some of the best experiences you've had so far.
Yeah, so I've been very lucky to have a number of good experiences. The first thing I did was a story called Digital Forever, which was sort of a sci-fi afterlife sort of tale. Um, didn't really know what I was doing too much. Reached out and found an artist online, which was Wilson Gandolfo, who's gone on to do some stuff with Behemoth and Keen Spot. Um, and I learned a lot from that because that was the first time I had ever written anything, and to sort of get images back from something that had lived in my head for so long was pretty amazing. Um, an interesting thing about that was English is not Wilson's first language, so it taught me to be very clear with what I was writing, because his experiences are different than mine. Not to use sort of North American slang terms because that can really confuse somebody who's not like, I think like trying to forget what it was, but it was something like maybe like I think I might have used the term like strip mall, like like we in like people in other countries, he was like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just a series of stores that are all sort of like next to each other and close." And he's like, "Oh, so." That was a pretty positive experience, and it's been really awesome to see Wilson go on to do more things. Sort of my closest sort of creative partnership is with Noah Ray. He is the guy that I do my podcast Constructing Comics with, and he has been pretty much involved in anything I've done, either art, lettering, editing. So that's been a really good collaboration, and he's brought a lot of stories to Ageless Press for us to publish. We have very similar interests and stuff like that. And then most recently, I've been working with Bora Oracle and Ertan Sehan for Dying Days. Those are guys that I did a Kickstarter with another sci-fi book called Multi Larceny, which were guys robbing banks in different sort of multiverses. So if they went to one multiverse and like the cops were on the ball, they would like, hey, we're not robbing that bank. But if they would go to another one where like the security guard wasn't paying attention, they were like, all right, that's the bank we're going to hit. And those guys have been real professionals in sort of making sure that like um, as a writer, I'm doing what I should be. I made the rookie mistake of trying to jam like 15 panels into a page, and Bora, the artist, really quickly came back to me. He's like, "Nope, I'm not drawing 15 panels per page." So now when I write, like if I get to like 6 or 7 panels, I start getting itchy and I'm like, nope, nope, this page is done. You gotta figure out a way for a page break. You gotta move to the next thing. But I did certainly make the rookie mistake where it was like everything was like 12, 15 panels, and he was like, nope, not gonna happen. One of two things. I'm not drawing that much and trying to cram all of that into a page and stuff like that. So just sort of being open and listening to folks. I've learned a lot, and the best and worst advice is that if you want to make a comic, the best way to learn about it is to make it. So those early Kickstarters, the first one was in black and white. Just each time just trying to add a new aspect. Then we went to having color, publishing books, doing podcasts, fitting into anthologies and stuff like that. So I've just been very lucky. I don't have any wood around me right now, but I haven't had any bad collaborations yet. So I've been extremely lucky.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. And just talking through that process of learning, it's nice to hear kind of that insider perspective on the way you've grown and kind of gotten to know that side of things.
Yeah, it's it kind of goes back to that learning by doing, like and if you're gonna go to a con, um, there's and if you're going to try to pitch yourself as somebody who's looking for work, that ability to lay a comic book down on somebody's table as sort of a proof of concept that like, hey, I've taken this from an idea, I've worked with a team, and I've produced this item. Like I think that that's very beneficial if you're going to try to pitch yourself to people at a con for work or to collaborate, because I'm sure they do get a lot of people coming up and me like this is my magnum opus, and they're like, so how much have you actually done with this? And they're like, oh no, it's all still in my head. So I think it's really important to have, if you want to go that path, to have something that you can tangibly lay down on the
Um,
table.
Curious about those spaces that people can go to learn a little bit more, and curious about what has your creative attention at the moment. I think there's something on the way that I've read about called Metal Eagle, but I don't think that's out yet. So just curious about that.
Yeah, so I have a website. It's mattkund.com. It's basically just my name.com. So that's a pretty easy place to go. It certainly has the list of socials on the side. Constructing Comics is a podcast I do with Noah, who I mentioned earlier, as sort of my collaborator on a lot of things. I believe we're on all the podcasting services. early on when I decided to do podcasting, I didn't realize how much tech stuff I was going to have to learn. I actually had to learn how to post the episodes and have them pushed out to all the various podcasting services. So either my website or anything that's constructing comics. Anybody who's watching this that wants to come onto the podcast, we'd love to have people on. We love talking process. A lot of folks who come on will be in the midst of having a Kickstarter, and we certainly talk about the Kickstarter, but we try to have like a 20 to 30 minute interview about the creative process. And we often joke that like, it's for me as much as it is for them because like I generally like will, I'll hear something, I'm like, hey, let me test out the way that person did it. And I'm like, oh, I really like that. Let me put that in my creative tool belt. So um it's very beneficial for me to do the podcast as well. And then you mentioned Metal Eagle. So I have kickstarted one issue of Metal Eagle that was over the summer or the spring. I'm a little bit behind. I should be launching issue two on Kickstarter very soon. That's so the high concept there is that the CIA creates a heavy metal band as a front to go around Eastern Europe and carry out various spying missions. Um, it's very action based conspiracy theories. I often joke with my wife that I love conspiracy theories, and she gets worried, and I'm like, no, no, no. I love conspiracy theories for like the storytelling aspect of it because like a good conspiracy theory is like I believe like two or three of those things are possible, and these other things are just totally out of whack. So it's a lot of conspiracy, music conspiracy, um, international affairs conspiracies, and stuff like that. And it's pretty action packed. Um, it's one of the good things about comics is you can do a lot of fun stuff, but it's a tried and true method that somebody needs to get punched in the face every once in a while, and a fight needs to break out in the comics. So like it'll be a lot of action and intrigue, but every once in a while you gotta get down and have a good old fight. So there's a lot of action in it as well. So I'm going to be doing more kickstarting with that, and actually Gonzalo and I started on we've actually started creating an Arc 2 where we're going to advance it into the 90s. And instead of heavy metal rockers, they're going to be sort of like grungy, sort of Pearl Jam, Soundgarden type. So we're going to go away from the 80s, early 90s to the more late 90s, early 2000s. So it's a new cast of characters, a new band, but same CIA mission to use a band to move assets around and as a front of how we're going to have our agents in different locations. So
Well, it sounds like there's a creative plan. It sounds like there's lots of storytelling to come. I hope you'll come back to talk about that project and other ones as they come along.
for sure, I'd love to come back on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for talking comics. And yeah, I appreciate what you're out there doing as both a person sharing work and also giving space for other people to share work. So glad to have you back anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.